No delay, runway 25 left, clear to take off, left altitude.
Everybody having a good MegaCon so far? My name is Moises. It is my distinct pleasure to be with you this morning. It's Sunday morning at a con. How many of you have never been to a MegaCon before this weekend? Okay, welcome. How many of you have been here many times? One time, 2 or 3 times? Okay, good. Welcome back. Sunday morning at a con. Woo. Everybody's waking up after 3 days of fun. How many of you have been here all weekend? Okay, thank you for being in for the long haul. Another show of hands, fans of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild? Okay, very good, very good. I'm in the correct room, I'm awake, doing things correctly so far. Now, the next thing that we've got to do is a little bit less calm, a little bit less sedate. Do you think that you have the right amount of energy to summon Zelda forth on the stage? Do you think you do? Can we get it? Let's do a test run. Do you think you're ready, Orlando? I'm going to take credit for that. Was my fault, okay? Let's try it again. Are you ready, Orlando? I don't quite believe you. Are you ready, Orlando? Let's get around onto the stage then. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia Summersett. Just have to make sure that everybody's ready.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, thank you. Made me already. I don't even need a coffee anymore. Yes.
So we'll take questions from the audience. I like to get things rolling, ask a few things of my own, but I also, especially after as long of a weekend as it's been, I like letting you guys do my job for me a little bit. Nothing wrong with being lazy. Patricia, what's your origin story as a performer? Did you start out wanting to act? Did you start out wanting to do something else? What was it that made you want to perform in front of people, relatively speaking, and give a performance of some sort?
Interesting question. I guess from a young age, I was thrust in front of the people before I really had a choice, maybe. Not that that was a bad thing, I quite loved it. I grew up with 3 sisters in a little town in Upper Michigan, and my mom was really active in getting us to do things like figure skate and sing in public. So the 4 of us would actually go out and we would sing songs in harmony, and we'd perform at local jamborees, at the little churches, and at people's houses during the holidays. We just sort of go over, whether it was Halloween or Christmas, and do like 4-part harmonies and sing all the songs for everybody. So I guess the origins of it are really from that. And then growing up, I guess, training for figure skating was what I did before I became an actor. And I think it was also the training aspect of always training for performances that didn't happen all the time, but there was a whole process to choreographing a program, putting it together, the whole athletic process of that I was really attracted to. And eventually became a figure skater after high school, and that led back to theater school when I realized that there was maybe a larger shelf life for acting than for figure skating, ironically. But I think it started when I was very young, and it started with my family.
What were you exposed to in terms of things that you became a fan of, whether it was books, movies, TV shows, music, what were you into?
Well, funny being in Orlando, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, but a lot of Disney. We had a lot of Disney in our house growing up, especially with 4 girls. The Disney princesses were a really big thing. I'm trying to think of what else.
Did you each have different favorite Disney princesses, or were you all?
That's a good question. I don't think we did, actually.
Who's your go-to?
Definitely The Little Mermaid, Belle.
Yes.
I guess Jasmine as well, I should say. Throw her in there.
I want to make sure that the Sultan's happy.
Yes, absolutely. Have I made you happy? Was that a good answer? Thank you. That's good. Belle, let's see. Belle, The Little Mermaid. I'm forgetting like all the...
Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella.
Yeah, Cinderella. Yeah, I'd say Belle and Little Mermaid were probably the bigger ones at that time. We knew the whole movies by heart, of course, and we were just parrots. We would parrot everything we heard. And I guess also through figure skating, things like Phantom of the Opera and some of the Fiddler on the Roof, some of the Broadway plays were big in our house too. And we would listen to those hundreds of times because we'd be choreographing programs to them and stuff like that.
Having choreographed programs to those songs many times over, are there any of those songs that you can still actually like? I mean, it's kind of like working in a pizzeria and going, do I have pizza for dinner? No, I don't know if I can, you know. Are there any of those songs that have kind of been maybe you know, ruined for you, or some of them not? That you
because it's been so long, I would say now they feel very nostalgic to listen to. So I don't think anything is actually ruined at all, really. I like them probably just as much, if not more. It's interesting to look back, though, through the lens of an adult and see how the stories were told to us. I've been very sensitive to that, you know, in my older years as a feminist and as somebody who is a storyteller myself. That's been interesting, but it's good to have both perspectives on it, like both the positives and the what I would change if I was going to tell that story aspect to it.
Well, somebody who personally loves The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast as well, but at the same time looking at it through the retrospective lens of there are a few things that are not exactly perfect about this. You've you know, I wouldn't say been you know, extremely like a firebrand or something, you know, getting your views out there, but what I've really enjoyed is you take the mantle of Zelda as a responsibility. You're dealing with fans, you're dealing with people who are, you know, coming to these conventions, figuring out who they are, figuring out what their agency in the world is going to be. How have you taken that responsibility to be something that you need to stand up for, that you need to represent?
Oh, that's a great question and very well executed. I love your questions, they're amazing.
Stop.
No, seriously, it's amazing.
Linda Carter put her head on my shoulder last night. Zelda was saying nice things to me. I'm gonna have a heart attack.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I would have a heart attack if Linda Carter put her head on me too.
It was a night full of heart attacks for me.
I'm so glad you're here this morning.
Yeah,
Don't drink any coffee. Yeah.
No.
Gosh, in terms of how I've taken on the role of the symbol, because indeed that has in fact happened to me, it's interesting when suddenly you're traveling the world and people say, wow, you're the first voice and that's a symbol for me and it means a lot to me. And of course you end up taking that responsibility very seriously. I've been to all sorts of new countries, I've been to the Middle East, and doing panels in front of people. I don't know what their full context is, but I know that they're all very interested in what I would have to say as a female with a strong voice. And for me, that's always something that's been important to me, and suddenly I have this platform in a small, soft way, and so I'm, in my own little way, I do take that very seriously. I guess one of the things that I just try to do in general, and this sort of platform makes it easier, is to just, whenever I meet people, I try to be as open as possible to whoever they are and whatever they're coming to me with, because you simply never know who's in front of you. But we all have commonalities, and wherever you go in the world you find the same things, the same stories, the same passions, the same loves. And that's just been, I don't know, it's been such an adventure there, and such an adventure to travel in this way as a voice of this character in a game so much larger than myself. Yeah, I don't know, I just really appreciate it a lot.
One of the things that I love so much about Breath of the Wild is that in the past, in previous games, Zelda has pretty consistently been, you know, the damsel in distress, the person to be rescued. And in this one, the way that I thought of it once I wrapped my head around the way that the story was structured, it really is Zelda who is fighting the great epic battle and she's waiting for her sidekick to show up. And I love that particular dynamic of things. At what point did you start getting to wrap your head around the way that this story was structured? Because when you do voiceover for a game, it's not like a script for a feature film. You've got 100 or so pages. You got a phone book of stuff and grunts and jumps and leaps and that kind of thing. At what point were you able to actually grasp what was going on in the story, or did that not come until later, until after you recorded?
I think I began to grasp, the elements of the stories as we were doing the scenes were coming out, and so it was a slow evolution process of like, oh, okay, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. But in terms of the way the game is structured, I didn't really figure out what that was going to be until it came out, and I realized how long it takes to go and unlock the memories and sort of how it's placed. It is particular in that way. So it was revealed to me probably at the same time as everybody else, that part of it.
Now, I have to ask, take us back to the actual auditioning process, the process of figuring out what it was you were auditioning for in the first place, because I gather this is not the kind of project where they tell you straight up, okay, by the way, headline, legendary, 30-year history Nintendo character, that's who you're auditioning for. Yeah. What was that whole process like for you?
Oh man, Moises, it was like, so when I auditioned for this role, of course, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was until after I had auditioned, had a callback, landed the role, signed the NDA agreements, and then I was told when I was going in for the trailer, they're like, by the way, this is the game, and I was like, and they're like, and you are Zelda, and just like, that it was extraordinary, and it came at a time for me that was really fascinating. I'd been acting for 10 years. I'd gone through all sorts of training, all sorts of moving around. I lived in Montreal, trained there, worked there in acting, then moved to England. I trained there. I'd studied in Russia and Denver. I'd lived in Toronto. I'd come back to Montreal, and finally, after sort of 10 years of doing this and pursuing my career, mostly theater, which then changed to TV, film, and video games started to take over a little bit, I finally was like, I'm gonna make that move to LA, I'm ready now. And so when I landed there, I had a great package and I submitted it, and that's what led to the audition. It was the first thing I auditioned for when I went to Hollywood. It's so crazy. I didn't even know what it was, and I was like, oh, I'm in this game audition and I hope to make a really good impression,
How long did you have to keep that secret that you had gotten the part? How long was it from getting the part to when it was actually public?
Roughly a year, and it was such a weird year. I don't even know how to, it was such an intense thing to keep quiet, and also, and I was deadly serious about making sure that I kept everything quiet. No, you don't tell family, you don't tell anybody, because you cannot risk any leak. You signed a very important contract and you want to uphold that. So, and Nintendo is, they are very respectful with their own stuff, and they keep it very secret on purpose. So you got to go with the character of the game company too, with the way that they do things. Yeah, it was quite the year though, because you really don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. I didn't know it was going to be the launch game for the Switch. I didn't know if the Zelda game itself was even going to do well in the series of Zelda games. I knew that there was, it was going to have some...
There being crests and valleys.
Sure, of course, right? And as they try new things, you don't know if it's going to land or not. I couldn't have predicted this. Nobody can predict this, yeah. Where it's like game of the year everywhere and all that stuff.
Until now, I didn't really think of the symbolism of, you were kind of fighting a battle surrounded in darkness for a year.
I felt like a silent princess. It was weird. I was like, I can't say anything, and I feel all this weird pressure on my shoulders as I'm like being quiet and just like hoping everything's gonna go well.
I know for absolute certain, this is not the first time you've been asked, what your history of playing the games was. Which one was your first one? Which one have you played the most? Which ones have you not really played as much?
Yeah.
Let us know what homework you have still to do.
All right. Oh man, yeah, so much. Because if you don't grow up playing all the games, there's a mountain ahead of you. I grew up playing the original a bit. I was more of a Mario player when I was. Yes, that's right, Mario.
Yeah, that must have been good. The first convention you did with Charles Martinet.
Yeah, the first time I saw him was at E3 after the game had come out. We were both at the Nintendo booth, and I was meeting some of the people from Nintendo. And people were like, "That's Mario," and I was like, "Oh my god!" And we took photos together.
Mario.
Yeah, and since then we've become friends, and we've seen each other at several conventions. We were just in Birmingham, in England, Birmingham, a month ago, having dinner together and chatting about life. It's nice.
So you were in an original NES?
Yes, original NES was the first Zelda game. I played some Ocarina of Time in high school. Mostly my boyfriend did though, I will admit. I more watched it because he was great, he was really obsessed with it. And then I played some Twilight Princess and definitely some Breath of the Wild, but I don't know if I'm gonna beat that game. But we'll see. I've hunted a lot of foxes recently with a sword, not a bow and arrow. I've gotten really good at creeping up on animals and slashing them.
That's troubling.
Yeah, I know.
Now, as you've been going to these conventions, we have a few people cosplaying characters from Breath of the Wild in the audience.
Yes,
right
we
here,
do.
right now.
You guys look awesome. Sorry.
Now, what was the experience like seeing cosplayers dressed up as characters from the game for the first time? Was that at that first E3, or did it take a few conventions in for you to actually see that side of things?
The first time I saw cosplay of Zelda that I really honed into was actually at LA Comic-Con in the fall before the game came out. I sort of quietly went there to just sort of check out the convention because I'd actually never been to one before, and I was like, I might be doing these, so I'm gonna go check it out. And first thing I did, ran into some Zeldas, Twilight Princess Zelda, I believe it was. And I was like, oh, wow. It was a woman with her child. Her child was Link, and she was dressed up in a full Twilight Princess gear, and I was enamored, and I continue to be enamored with that process, that I get to meet all these people that come up dressed as the various characters I've done. It's wild. Guys, it's so much fun. Listen, I love it.
Well, there's so many unique takes on things, too.
Yeah.
There are like mashups where people will do like Kid Icarus and Zelda, and so it's like Zelda with giant wings and everything. What are some of the incredibly unique things that you've seen where people are doing like a take on a Zelda character? I've seen people in the go-karts from Mario Kart.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what are the, like I've had some really interesting hybrids too. What would they be now? My brain feels really blank this morning after 4 days. I'm like, what? I can't remember now.
Well, any like Rainbow Six mashups.
Oh gosh, I just had like 10 Siege cosplayers come to me yesterday, and we all did a little video. It was really hilarious. I love Siege cosplayers as well. Oh my gosh. And I always tag people from Ubisoft in it, and they're like, yeah, like the community managers on Ubisoft love it too. So we all geek out over that as well. I really enjoy that there's so much homemade stuff. Oftentimes I see people with a mix of stuff they've bought and then like really meticulously done, amazingly done homemade props and costume pieces when they come up in their cosplay. So yeah, I just congratulate them because I'm like, dude, that's amazing. And I know it took you so many hours, and yeah, it's just fun. Yeah.
People bring, I'm sure, not just copies of the game, not just photos of Zelda, that sort of thing, all kinds of stuff for you to sign. What are some of the coolest things that people have brought you to sign that come from the Zelda world?
Oh, that come from the Zelda world?
Swords, shields.
Oh yeah, I sign a lot of swords. I've never cut myself.
Good.
Thankfully.
Keep that up.
I've signed an asparagus. That's probably one of the more unique things that I've signed.
It's a tough thing to preserve.
I know, they clearly didn't care. It was an ephemeral experience for them.
It was going to be there and gone.
You know what they did? They just ate it afterwards. And now I live within them forever. Oh, I don't think they ate it. I don't think they did. They definitely ate it.
They definitely ate it. So
I hope it was edible pen and not like permanent marker, because they're like, ooh, that tasted great, wow. I don't feel so good.
Well, a bunch of people come up to see you at these conventions. You're a fan of various things too. I'm sure that you've rubbed elbows with some people whose work you've grown up on, that you've appreciated, that you've enjoyed. What are some of those experiences that you've had? Conventions themselves, I mean, it's a surreal place in the best way I could possibly mean that.
In Dallas a couple weeks ago, I met Mia Farrow, and I almost died. And I'm a huge fan of her work, but also The Last Unicorn on Earth is one of my favorite. Does anybody know that movie?
The Last Unicorn,
on Earth? One of my favorite childhood movies with my sisters again, and Angela Lansbury and Jeff Bridges and Mia Farrow, they all do the voiceover in that, and I was like, Last Unicorn on Earth, like it's so obscure, but like that's what I remember her from the most, weirdly. Oh my gosh, like so many cool moments meeting fans, like the Back to the Future cast, getting to meet some of those guys personally. What's so strange, funny story, James Token, the principal in Back to the Future, so he actually grew up in the same county as me in this obscure little place in Upper Michigan, Baraga County. He grew up across the bay from where I grew up. And so we've had this weird, we're like, you grew up? He's like, whoa, I've never met anybody from that area before. And I'm like, me neither. Like, you just don't see celebrities of any kind that come from there. And so now we're buddies. That's all. And it makes me so happy. Anyway, and I'm not a slacker, so it all works out really well.
He's going to watch out for you. I've got a couple more for you, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. What have you found is the thing that you are called to, most interested in doing next? Are you wanting to do more voice work? Are you wanting to do more on-camera stuff? I know that you have an album that you're working on. Are you wanting to really dig into music for a while? You know, what are you looking to do since you have the luxury of some choice in that matter?
Well, right now my year is going to be so filled with travel. I've got a lot of conventions this year, more than ever before, and so I'm finding there's only so much that I can do that's new around traveling. Because as soon as I land, I go again, because I split my time between Montreal and LA, and then on top of that, I'm traveling off all over the place. So I'm just sort of holding on for the ride this year a little bit. I'm also releasing, and our band is like basically self-producing our second album, and we're going to be releasing that in the fall. It's just gotten onto its final mixes. That's a huge, dream of ours to keep going with the music. We'd love to do a little tour. That might have to happen after these kinds of tours happen. It's just so much travel. But in terms of live action, I'd like to do a bit more of that too. I do a few projects every year. I do a bit of TV and film, mostly out of Canada, funny enough. But yeah, that's still on the burner, and I'm still auditioning for that. I've got some video games that I can't say that I'll be announcing a little bit later this year as well.
I mean, E3's coming up pretty soon. Maybe we'll hear a few things there.
I wonder, I feel like the thing that I'm going to be able to announce might end up being like the fall or something like that. The big one, but there's some other ones too. We'll see.
Stay tuned, follow her on Twitter.
Yeah, secrets.
Okay, somebody always asks this in some way or another, also inside the Nintendo family. She's young. Also inside the Nintendo family, are you a Smash player? And do you think that maybe, if you're not, maybe all of this travel that you have coming up, the Nintendo Switch is a portable system.
It is.
Maybe you might dive deep into Smash. Are you playing it much? Have you played it much?
I played a very little amount of Smash, funny enough, and I've been asked to play when I go to certain places. I gotta get better at that. I've tried Zelda. I'm horrible. It's just horrible. I hear you can like use her alter ego and then press A a lot, and that works really well. I'm like,
it'd be really weird if you were a Ganondorf main.
Yeah,
that would actually disturb me a little bit. I'd be concerned.
I think Bowser would probably be who I would.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bowser's a good go-to, right? A little cheap, but gets the job done. All right,
hey.
You got questions out here? Questions out here? Right up here in the front.
When it changes, I can't do it in the voice. People still haven't played the game. Even though it's been out for 2 years, people are just picking it up, and so I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. That would be bad.
Yeah, right there.
First of all, it was very nice to meet you yesterday. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for meeting me. It's my pleasure.
So my question is, what's your experience like as a woman in the voice acting industry? Do you face any sexism from within, maybe from without, from the fans?
Interesting question, especially with the particular characters that I play, both Zelda and Ash and Siege, which is a lot of female players in that, but still definitely male-dominated. And actually, I know a lot of the streamers. I'm thinking like Ammunition and some of the other ones that I know, Lil Lexi. They've experienced, they just experience hordes of, hate online just by being a woman. They're dressed appropriately. It doesn't matter what you do, you still can experience a lot of online violence, basically. My experience has been, I would say, in the entertainment industry in general. It is a fascinating industry, and it's heavy on age and looks, and you have an incredible amount of, I would say, double standards a lot of the time on you as a woman. You just have to work really, really hard all the time to get to where you want to go. And it's not all based on talent all the time, unfortunately. I do feel like voice acting has had more of, there's been more liberty in that, in terms of, like, your technique really does matter a heck of a lot. And generally, because of the companies that I've worked with recently, like Ubisoft is working very, very hard. I played a lot of female warrior characters for Ubisoft, which is one of my great dreams, and it continues to be one of those amazing things that I get to do. They're working very hard to actually, try to fight that trend. So I don't know, things are changing, but obviously, like the ratio is very, very uneven, and we've had the whole Me Too movement. We've had all sorts of things come out in the last years that, and it's exhausting to hear about over and over again for people. But things have got to change, and they are changing. But we've just got to keep pushing along to try to find a little bit more equality in that, for sure. And I don't know, a lot of people are doing really great work in that too, though. So I feel very happy about that. And it's great to be in America as well, I will say. Even with, it's not perfect, let's say that, but there's a lot.
You've been reading the news too.
Oh, well, yeah. Yes, I have. Well, I'm Can-American, I'm Canadian-American, so I get to see both of those sides. But being in the West in general, we're very hard on our culture, but my gosh, we've got it good here. We've got it really, really good on this side of the world. We are just so lucky. So I come from that first before I try to say anything. I just diverged way off that question, but I'll say
Patricia Summersett, 2020.
Yeah, oh gosh. I never take for granted being a female who has a voice and a career and something that I've been able to build by myself, and never really totally felt like I've had to stop anything entirely because I was a woman. And that in the world and where I am in history is a very big deal. And I never take that for granted. So, and I found a lot of liberty in video games to play female warriors in general, even with all of the ratios that don't always add up well. So, yeah.
They're on the aisle.
Yes. For my son.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You want to get up?
I almost remembered his name from this morning, but I can't because I saw. No, yeah.
Outside of Zelda and Rainbow, have there been any other games that you wanted to audition for but haven't gotten to yet?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, which gig would you really love to be called in for?
I would love to be on Overwatch, guys.
There's such a cool girl gang.
Oh, man.
Voice actors on that
I
show.
know, and Lucy Pohl is actually Mercy, she's my good friend, and I love hanging out with them.
Bring her chocolate, she will love you forever.
She is such a great comedian too, yes, she really is. I watched her stand-up show as well when we were all in London last year together. Yeah, Overwatch would be fun. Let's see. Actually, I'm just not gonna. Yeah, sorry. I just yeah. Let's stick with Overwatch for now.
There we go. Safe answer.
I was trying to not.
Delicately
sometimes I have to
ice
filter
dance
my.
around.
Yeah, that's right.
Up here in the front.
Hello, good morning. It's your
Good
boy,
morning.
Aladdin.
Hello, Aladdin.
Hello. It's a pleasure to meet you, to talk to you. Okay, so my question for you is, before Breath of the Wild, canonically said that didn't have a voice or performance. The only two moments where she spoke were in the awful ceremony cartoon.
Oh, hey, come on.
Well, excuse me, Prince.
Excuse you.
I watched way too many episodes of that show.
Okay, I retract that. I apologize. It's an acquired taste. But seriously, that was one of the first times that Zelda spoke. And then later on and I think we can agree with this, the awful CDI games, where she spoke as well. But since this is Breath of the Wild was the official canon game where Zelda spoke, what were some of the directions that you were given to play Zelda? Do you have any input for your own performances? How was that process? Did you want to talk to? Because again, this is the very first time that Zelda spoke in a canon Zelda game.
Yes. Well, in general, I don't go into too much detail with that stuff, just because I think probably Nintendo would prefer that I don't go into every detail about that thing. I respect their privacy in that. But I would say that the decisions that I made, including the British accent, all that stuff, that was in the specs, like that was in the audition breakdown that I had, which gave a sort of general outline of her being a timeless princess of sorts, with the weight of the world on her shoulders, so to speak, and kind of in the UK fantasy-based genre, which is very, when you think about it, kind of a lot of games, so it's, it's like hard to really, I never would have guessed what the game was. In terms of the way that it is to work with Nintendo, I can tell you it's, most of my communications were with Nintendo America, and they are incredibly kind and prepared, and obviously a lot of heart and detail went into the English version of that script and how it was going to match with the lip flaps, because all that stuff is highly technical and they needed to find the right script that everybody could approve that would then match with the rhythm of the Japanese lip flaps, that sort of thing. That stuff is incredibly complicated, much more than one would think. It takes a long time. So by the time I came in, a lot had been decided, and I just had to breathe as much life and heart into it as possible. And I had a great director, Jamie Mortellaro, he's a wonderful game director. He's done loads of games. They also asked him to play Prince Sidon in the game, so he's also Prince Sidon now, which is so funny. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks at SAC Anime, which will be fun. And he does like line readings for you before you do your lines if you don't have the feedback of another character there in the room with you. So I would say overall, working with them has been just an incredible and very precise and warm experience. And it was like one of those things where you're in a room and everything feels really sacred all the time because you're like, this is the Zelda game and everything is amazing and we just need to make it just perfect, you know, like that's how it was, I think, for everybody on every recording in that session. One of those magical ones. They're all magical, but this was particularly magical, let's say.
Well, tell me, we've got a tight schedule, it's time to wrap up. I've got one more thing for you. You've done...
My pleasure.
You've done a bunch of these conventions now, and you've had a lot of people come up to you, not just talking to you about this game itself, but the entire history of Zelda games, because you have kind of, swept them all together. People are able to talk to you about what this game, what the character means to them. Have you gotten any particularly surprising, touching, maybe in some respects surreal stories from fans about what your work on this and the fact that they can talk to you as the physical embodiment of Zelda, how much Zelda means to them and how it's gotten them through this or that or the other in their lives? Oh,
I'm trying, to recall even one of those, people come up to me with the most incredible stories, the most incredible tattoos that they've had for, that they've worn every day of their life for years. Stories of coming back to health, stories of hanging out with family members that are no longer there, stories of friends who are sick and can't be there, but it means a lot to them to hear something. There's so many stories like that that have moved and touched me. I've cried a fair bit going to these events. And then there were also the really strange moments where, I think I might have mentioned this to you before, but in the Middle East, the first convention I did was in Kuwait, and I was like, is this a real convention? I had no idea that there were conventions 2 years ago in the Middle East, and a lot of them have just cropped up recently. And
turns out a bunch of young sultans are very big nerds.
Yeah, well, they have princess and princes over there for real, and sheiks, and so I remember I went over and I was like, got picked up in a pink limo, at the airport, and was like, whoa, and then I find myself, in a huge hotel, get, ushered to this convention, and then suddenly, there are bodyguards coming in, and this royal sheik comes in, and then I'm just like, they're princes, and you're just like, okay, I am a video game princess signing my autograph for a real prince, and also a sheik, and also I'm a sheik in some weird way. And I was like, oh, that's weird. That's really, really, really weird and cool. It's something I never thought would happen to me in my life, You're like, I'm in the Middle East right now, signing the autograph for a sheik, and I have a persona as a sheik, and I'm a video game princess. It's a really funny thing. I don't know. Like on some like meta, it's so weird. Yeah. So a lot of things like that happen too. So.
You here the rest of the afternoon?
I am, yes.
Okay, so if how many of you have gone to see Patricia at her table? Okay, you can go and see her again. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. How many of you have not gone to see Patricia at her table? Okay, you have homework. I'm assigning it right now. Expect it to be complete by the end of the day. Can we hear it one more time from Patricia Summersett? Blow the room up.
Yeah, I'll be back very soon at my table, and have a great rest of your time in Orlando.